I know that YouTube has been flooded lately with a lot of Middle Eastern videos. And when you see those videos, they typically feature fragrances that are on the more affordable end. And many of those, not all, but many happen to be dupes or imitations of other fragrances on the market, which is totally fine, fantastic. However, the thing about that gets a little bit bizarre is that people then associate Middle Eastern fragrances with just that and forget that there are houses like AMOUAGE out of the Middle East that represent sort of a whole different genre of fragrances. I would like to talk about AMOUAGE in this video. I also mentioned in a video that features the House of Whittian and the House of Beau together. The thumbnail looks like this. If you haven't caught that and you're interested, please check that video out. That Whittian is another Middle Eastern fragrance house that falls into this same category of luxury fragrances. AMOUAGE is known to be pricey. However, friends, they appear on the gray market quite a bit. I happen to shop on Joma Shop as one of the places that I found a lot of AMOUAGE fragrances in a more affordable category, as well as FragranceNet, Fragrance by CA. If you're patient enough, eventually the AMOUAGE fragrance that you love will show up on a discount site if you're not interested in paying the over $300 for a single bottle. Ay, 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 super expensive. I want to tell you just a little bit about the house before we get into some of the ones I've tried, and then I want to do my top 10 favorites that are actually in hand with me right now. This is a fragrance house out of Oman that has been around since 1983. So it's over 4 decades old at this point. It was created as the gift of kings. On the website, it says that AMOUAGE is a unique fusion of East meets West that defines avant-garde opulence. It expresses the contemporary majesty of Oman, a historic trading center for incense and myrrh. You'll see those notes and notes similar to that woven throughout many of the selections from this house. AMOUAGE perfumes carry a sophisticated signature that attests to unparalleled craftsmanship, quality, and creative integrity, using only the finest and most special ingredients from around the world and composed by world-recognized perfumers. That's quite a pedigree for a fragrance house. I do happen to enjoy a lot from the house. I've fallen down the rabbit hole more recently. I will say if you're newer to fragrances, this is likely going to be a fairly challenging house, with the exception of, I think it's called the Garden Collection, and perhaps some of the newer releases that I think are a bit more mass appealing than the house is traditionally known to be. Generally, the fragrances from this house have been rather challenging for me to try, with few exceptions, but I really do enjoy them, and I find them to be of very high quality and super long lasting, the ones that I have tried out. Even the ones that I thought were way out there for me, I can appreciate the sort of artistry behind them. So let's get into it. But before we do you like AMOUAGE? And if so, what is your favorite? Please drop that down in the comments and share with us what you think it smells like. So let's get into it. Actually, I have to correct to something that I just said, because there was one fragrance that I tried from the women's line. I have not tried any from the men's line. I would like to, but I haven't. But I did try Myths. Whew. This was not an enjoyable experience, and I could not appreciate the artistry behind this. The bottle is gorgeous. The artwork on the boxes for these fragrances is spectacular. So if you are concerned about presentation or would like to share one of these as a gift, they come in gorgeous boxes. Even the ones that are plainer are still really nicely done packages. So Myths was abysmal to me. It was such a bad experience. It made my eyes water in bad ways. In bad ways. It was so deeply, pungently green in a very sort of artificial plastic direction. It was just very hard for me to tolerate, to the point where it's even difficult for me to describe. So I cannot in good conscience recommend to anyone that they try the fragrance Myths. Some of y'all love this. When you look at reviews on Fragrantica for this fragrance, there are some diehard lovers, believers of this. So if you're one of those people, please let us know in the comments. I love Myths, and tell us what the sort of key features of the fragrance are for you, so that other viewers can understand what their experience might be like. As for me, I don't think I ever want to sniff this fragrance again. It kind of traumatized me. Yeah, it was bad. So let's move on from that one. I did try Journey, which is one that I did appreciate, but I didn't want a full bottle for it. For me, it was incredibly long lasting and strong, and some notes that maybe I don't want to smell like all day, but I do appreciate it. When I first tried this out, it smelled like new sneakers. Like when you open a box of new sneakers, new tennis shoes, there's that sort of plastic, artificial smell that's kind of nice and interesting, but maybe not a fragrance I would want or smell I would want on my body. As it began to develop, I got this sort of overripe plum leatheriness to it and a slightly powdery experience with Journey. So it's strong. If you like the idea of plum and leather and powder, check this out, give it a sniff, see what you think. I will revisit this fragrance at some point in the future. It's not unusual for me to be really put off by something and then try it later and think that it's gorgeous and have a completely different experience. But I said no to Journey. Bracken is one that is of interest to me. I have a maybe by it, like a question mark, and leaning toward yes. And one that if I find it on sale, which I have several times, I may go ahead and just get like a wild hair and pick this up. I like the way that the bottle looks. I don't think that, by the way, I don't think many of the AMOUAGE fragrances are mass appealing, but there are a few that are, and I will point those out. I find this one to be bizarre in good ways. It was very super fruity berry for me. I got a lot of sort of tropical candy, almost leaning slightly rotten. It was so like sugary that it was almost like rotten, but not quite there yet. And that extreme sugariness was appealing to me. Tropical candy. And I also found this green and woody to balance out that sort of fruity sweetness. So I'm very interested in this. It was intriguing and I enjoyed smelling it. I also tried Portrayal. This is another one I would like to revisit at some point. This was incredibly long lasting, eternal as a fragrance when I sampled it. It was for me a combination of fruity gum. So think like juicy fruit and those kinds of gums or other berry scented gums mixed with juicy fruit. I got this sort of cashmere tone, like a warm, cozy tone from Portrayal. And then these resins, like think about ambery, syrupy, resinous types of notes in the base of the fragrance. This one was very interesting. I didn't feel compelled to pick up a bottle, but again, it's one that I would like to revisit along with Bracken. I would probably go ahead and pull the trigger on Bracken before Portrayal. Portrayal is one that I would probably need to sample again to feel comfortable purchasing it. I have also tried Dia, which was really like intensely soapy, and there was something a little metallic in that one. I'd like to revisit that because I remember saying that in a video, a sampling video, and those of you that like Dia really came to her defense. You all were like, Dia is gorgeous. So I would like to give that another try, maybe buy a bigger sample of it, a bigger decant, a proper decant, and kind of wear it and see what I think. Sometimes, as I would say, decanting and sampling doesn't give you the right feel for a fragrance. Also have tried but don't own Lilac Love in the purple bottle. I think that's really nice. It is lilacs in powder, and I believe there's some musky tones to that if I remember correctly. You do have to enjoy those sort of purple florals to like that fragrance. So I haven't pulled the trigger on that one yet. I may, and so I give that a thumbs up. One that I've tried more recently, and I thought it was pleasant when I tried it, and then thought perhaps in the dry down, it got a little bit like decomposed as a scent. It started to break apart. I have used my sample and sampled it more recently and started to really kind of be into it and think about it a lot. And I was waiting for it to go on sale, and I may just pull the trigger now. I don't know. It's called Love Delight. It's one of the latest on the market. I like the creamy look, like the apricot-y creamy look of the bottle. Well, slightly kind of apricot. It's like a nudie apricot looking bottle, and I have a little bit of it on here today, and I have to say it smells like hypnotic poison a little bit to me. Is anyone else getting that? Like this almondy, slightly powdery fragrance on the dry down, very feminine. It does open with, I think it's ginger and maybe a few other citrusy notes. So it's a little bit sort of bright and floral in the opening, light and bright and happy, and as it settles down, it gets creamier with this sort of dense powderiness. The powderiness isn't as pronounced, but it's somewhere there inside of the like mixture of the notes in the composition as it continues to dry down. And I do feel like I get this almond aspect, maybe a little bit leaning in the doll head direction, but not quite there like that. If you think about a doll head scent, it has a slightly plasticky aspect to it. I don't find Love Delight to be plasticky, but I do find it to be creamy and like almondy in a very light, nutty way. So it has me intrigued, and it may be coming home to me soon. So if you see it in a future video, you know what happened. So that one gets a thumbs up. Now let's get into the top 10 that I have in my collection. I will say I have not tried the new Guidance. Is it Guidance 46 or whatever? The flanker for Guidance. So I was shocked that there was an AMOUAGE flanker for Guidance. Have you tried Guidance? The thing is nuclear. Why did we need a flanker? I don't know. The bottle of the fragrance is beautiful. I love a good ombre bottle. I really do. The price tag on this is redonkulous. It's over $500 if I'm not mistaken. And I'm gonna have to wait for this to go on sale to get adventurous to try it. I do like the guidance. It's in my lineup. And so I don't know. Have you tried the new guidance? If so, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think it is worth the money? Let us know because that bottle is super pretty, but not at that price tag, not right now. All right, so let's get into it. So in my number 10 slot, we'll do the top 10 for me in my collection, is the very popular Love Tuberose. And the reason I think this is popular is it's because it's a scent that is very mass appealing. There are, I think, 4 in the same collection as Love Tuberose that are, I believe, designed to be liked by many people and not typical of the AMOUAGE sort of bizarre weirdness. And I say bizarre weirdness in the best way possible. These are fragrances that just are unique for the most part. This one is pretty mass appealing. It sits out on the website for $380. I do like the AMOUAGE website. It's quite beautiful. However, you can find these on discount, as I mentioned. Joma Shop carries them. The other discount sites, you'll see these. Another place I have purchased these for in the 150 range US dollars has been on the perfumespot.com. So if you're interested, take a look at that place too. So this one is tuberose, and a very sort of friendly tuberose for folks, even for people that aren't into tuberose or think that it's too loud of a note. Other white florals at the top, gardenia and jasmine. This is characterized though mostly by that soft white floral aspect accompanied by a heart note of chantilly cream and also of vanilla. So this is a very sort of fluffy, creamy fragrance. It does give you the texture of whipped cream like that. If you imagine what that might smell like in perfume, the texture of that combined with white florals is what you have here. There is some depth and anchoring from cedarwood and sandalwood in this fragrance, but I don't think that those are pronounced players or even noticeable. For me, it's mostly the tuberose and that sort of creamy middle that makes this very wearable and enjoyable by very many ladies, and some men enjoy this fragrance as well. I think it is elegant, easygoing, beautiful, breezy, easy breezy, spring and summer floral fragrance. And I mean, can we just take a minute for these bottles? All of the women's bottles have this shape, which I love. Some versions have the name on the side and others don't. I forget which came first, the version with the names or the version without. I forget, and it doesn't matter to me. And I like the tops that are supposed to mimic some of the iconic architecture in Oman. They all have this little plaque on the front. Anyway, the bottles are very elegant. They have magnetic caps that twist into place, that thing. So those are nice added extra touches. So this is my number 10, quite beautiful. In my number 9 slot, you do have to enjoy jasmine to enjoy this fragrance. And I know a decent percentage of viewers out there are like averse to jasmine for some reason. They just don't like it. It doesn't agree with them. It doesn't smell good to them. This is AMOUAGE Ashore with the nice sort of delicate lilac-y pinkish top here. And I'm going to ignore what the notes say to tell you that there is a peppery, slightly peppery, slightly spicy opening to this fragrance, but it's characterized mostly by a somewhat indolic jasmine note. It's Jasmine Sambac Absolute. And it says it has Rose Absolute. I can't tell you that I pick up rose in the fragrance, a solar accord in the middle, but it's by and large a jasmine fragrance. And it's jasmine that has started to age in the wild, not fresh jasmine. And it's nice that way. It doesn't smell bad to me at all. Obviously, I have it. I own it. It's in the number 9 slot. I think there's something fairly sensual about this. For some reason, I find a few of us have joked out here. So those of you in the audience that know what I'm talking about, you know, if you know, you know. Men in particular seem to, for the most part, really be in love with jasmine scents. So this is one that my husband finds particularly interesting and alluring. In the base, there's ambergris, which some people perceive to be a little bit of a salty note, like sea, salty air type of thing. And there's sandalwood, and I do get some kind of sandalwood base, but primarily it's a jasmine fragrance. It's light and wispy, almost like a seaside jasmine that comes to mind for me here. So that's what this is. And I love it for that, but it's in the 9 slot because I have ones that I love more. And I think that jasmine is just one of those challenging notes for a lot of the audience. So Ashore. Number 8 slot, you either love this fragrance or you abhor it and are repulsed by it. I can see both sides. I happen to be on the love side, but the opening of this is like it will make you recoil for a couple of minutes. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It is Guidance, which has been all over YouTube over the past years, in the past year and a half or so. And it has this sort of creamy, almost like a latte colored top with the little emblem. I love the pinkness of this bottle. It suits me in that sense. And I'm not going to lie, I want to try the new Guidance for the bottle alone, even if the fragrance ends up being one that I like less than this one. But so this is a really tough fragrance to describe. Do not try to describe it from the opening. If you do sample this, spray it and maybe walk away from where you've sprayed it for a minute. Give it a chance to settle down for, I don't know, 5-ish minutes or so, and then return and see what you think of this. So some of the primary notes highlighted on the AMOUAGE website at the top: pear, frankincense, and hazelnut, which is an interesting combination. So you get that sort of pungent frankincense smell right away. However, it is tempered. So you're not going to notice that it's frankincense. It's sort of blended in a really smooth way with this creamy sweetness from pear. And it's, for me, like a fresh pear, not a cooked pear. Like if you first bite into a nice green pear, a little bit of that, and then that is tempered by that hazelnut nuttiness. So it's just an interesting, strange combination on the opening. As it progresses through its life, a little bit of the saffron comes through, rose. Those two notes stand out to me. It has osmanthus and jasmine sambac, but saffron and rose are some of the primary players throughout the life of the fragrance. In the base, there's a lot happening, but I do want to highlight vanilla and woodiness in the base. So it is a difficult one to describe. I think it is a very crowd-pleasing, compliment-snatching fragrance, but it's one that you have to let waft off of you. I say this a lot about a lot of fragrances. If you spray it on and you stick your nose in it, you're not getting the experience that people are getting in the air as it sort of dissipates and becomes less dense as molecules sort of spread out into the air. This is a fragrance you must appreciate in the air, not like this. So the best way to do that for me is if you buy a sample or a decant, spray a piece of clothing, put it on a counter like in your bathroom or something, leave, get the heck out of there. Go clear your olfactory palate with some fresh air, come back into the room and kind of hover around that piece of clothing to get a real sense of what it actually smells like to other people in the air. And this is one of those fragrances that you have to do that with. Otherwise, if you're smelling up like this, you're going to get a lot of almost like this medicinal vibe, like the frankincense and the ambergris and some of the other notes in here will come across a little bit medicinal. But if you smell it in the air, you get a little bit more of that freshness of the pear, the saffron, and the rose, and that vanilla woodiness in the base that make this so appealing for so many people. You got to trust me on this. And hey, if you don't, and you're just not a Guidance gal or guy, that's fine too. Not every fragrance is for everyone. This has certainly been one of the most polarizing releases from AMOUAGE in recent years. Going on to the lucky number 7 slot. This is another one that's polarizing. People love it or are repulsed by it. I took a chance and ordered this and decided that I loved it. I will say though, if I had sampled it first, I might have been repulsed by it. And so sometimes when I try a fragrance on completely, I have a completely different experience with it than from sampling. I can tell you this is one, if you sample, might smell a little stinky for you. Did I sample you? Am I telling the folks a lie? Now I don't even remember. But my concept still stands. If you sample this first, it's going to seem a little bizarre. I would encourage you to do a full day wear on at least a 2 milliliter decant if you're interested. This is called Overture, not to be confused with Overture or Ouverture from Xerjoff, which is a different fragrance experience. This one is very, very strong and not a typical profile for a lady's fragrance in that it has a significant amount of leather in the base. It's a very smooth, alluring, sensual leather. But, you know, if you're averse to leather and averse to like saffron and notes of that nature, you're not going to enjoy this. I find this to be very sexy, date night kind of, evening, special occasion, alluring fragrance. Some of the keynotes listed are saffron and pear. There's bergamot as well, and I can see how there are citrusy aspects to this as it opens and starts to dry down. But I would say that saffron and leather show up right away. There's leather, frankincense, and labdanum in the base, and some of that kind of pops out right away in this fragrance experience. Other keynotes that are listed that I think are worth you knowing about: rose, a really nice, dark, almost like gothic, very mature rose. Like I think of velvet curtains in a cathedral or in a dark old castle when I think about the rose that shows up in this fragrance. Cinnamon, yes, there is not cinnamon in the sense of like what you sprinkle on your food, but think about like that kind of spiciness in general, kitchen spices in the fragrance, and myrrh. So a very, very complex fragrance, sort of traditional Middle Eastern in the sense that it combines the florals with the spices, with that saffron and leather, incense, myrrh, frankincense rather, myrrh, all of that. So it's complex. It can singe your nose hairs if you're not ready for it, but it dries down to such a beautiful, alluring scent trail that I think it's worth trying out if you have bold fragrance tastes. If you don't, you want to stick to something like a Love Tuberose if you want to just try out the house. But this is very sort of characteristic of the intensity and complexity of fragrances that AMOUAGE is traditionally known for. In my number 6 slot, speaking of cinnamon and rose and bold traditional AMOUAGE fragrances, I have Crimson Rocks in this gorgeous dark pink. What would you call this color? It's almost like a purpley pink color with this burgundy top on it. This is gorgeous. It reminds me so much of a holiday Christmas type of scent. Rose and honey in the middle are characteristic of this fragrance with cinnamon. It's cinnamon bark, but it does come across like just a nice, deep, spicy cinnamon deal here. There's woodiness and vetiver and cedarwood in the base. But I love that this is dark and deep, and it just reminds me of like a cathedral at Christmas if they have potpourri scents or Christmassy, cinnamony types of scents inside of the cathedral with all of the other incensey types of roses and whatever. And there's a nice sweetness in here from the honey as well to balance it out. It gets really smooth as it dries down on the skin. This is another one that opens a little bit rude, like it kind of, slaps you around a bit when it first opens up, with the spicy aspects of it. But in the mid and the dry down, that rose and cinnamon aspects and the honey and the woodiness come through. Very heavy hitter fragrance. So this one is bold, just like Overture is, and Guidance. These are not for the faint of heart. These are for people that want to be smelled from a mile away with a few spritzes. And if you don't mind sort of filling up a room and commanding the space with your scent, this might be one that you would be interested in trying out. Crimson Rocks. In my number 5 slot, and like I've said with these other sort of videos where I'm ranking from houses, gosh, any one of the 5 remaining could be sort of switched around for slots 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, at the exception of maybe number 1, because that one holds its slot strongly. But these others, you can mix around. This is Blossom Love in this gorgeous pink bottle with a tinge of a lilac color in it. Nice silvery top with the pink little gem there. I originally had a dupe of this that I enjoyed. It's called Janoon Rose by Al Haramain. And I think that's either out on Mercari right now or has sold already. Nuclear fragrance. And this one is too. Do not overspray with this or it will become a powder bomb, an overwhelming powder bomb. This is characterized by a cherry blossom nectar note as it lists on the website. I think on Fragrantica it just says cherry blossom, but if you go to the site, you see, this is why it's important not to always go to Fragrantica and go ahead and go to the website of the perfume house to see what is it that they want you to pick up, not what everybody on Fragrantica picks up from it. Oh my God, so beautiful. Such a light, fresh, airy. Oh, I say light, but it is actually a very substantive fragrance. I mean, the notes in here give off a lightness of being. Really light, bright cherry blossom. It has rose liqueur. Interesting. I can sense some sort of rosy aspects in here. In the heart, it lists ylang-ylang, amaretto, and vanilla. So think about amaretto almost as leaning in like an almond direction. Like it shows up like a boozy heliotrope, if that makes sense to you. Almonds or something soaked in liquor, but lightly. It doesn't take over. It's almost like a fresh Play-Doh scent, which I really, really like in here. Vanilla, and then in the base, tonka bean, sandalwood, and cashmere. Absolutely lovely woody base. Substantive. It gives it sort of a nice foundation for that cherry blossom and the amaretto to sort of bounce off of, and like an illumination of those scents on top of the sandalwood. It is very, very feminine, very strong, beautiful projection, incredible sillage, nuclear longevity on this fragrance. If that's important to you, here you go. You get it in this fragrance. Some find this to be a little bit cloying because it feels to them overly like densely powdery and too floral. I don't feel like it's too floral for me, but I have a high tolerance for florals. And I think that the cherry blossom aspect, if you smell the cherry blossom, It's like pink as a color. Look at that. And it's nice and bright and fun. If I didn't know any better, I would say this has some jasmine in it too. I don't see that listed, but I get something like a little bit like the jasmine that's in Ashore. Not nearly as strong or whatever that, note in here that is mimicking the jasmine there, but like faintly in the background. Gorgeous fragrance. I really, really think this is for those of you that love the most highly feminine fragrances and you enjoy powdery aspects, definitely check this out. One of the vanilla hits, big hits of last year in my number 4 slot is AMOUAGE Material. Y'all, this is absolutely stunning as a winter vanilla fragrance, but you can also wear this year round. It's not overpowering so much that you couldn't wear it in late spring, some, lighter summer days, and definitely into the fall. It's like an all occasion vanilla in that it can be a date night fragrance. It can be a rainy day fragrance. It can be bedtime fragrance if you spray very, very lightly on this. Beautiful. You can wear this to work with a very light spray. It's interesting what's listed as the top notes. Elemi, which is like this resinous, has a touch of greenness to it if I remember correctly, but a resin. And then patchouli. And I wouldn't say that I pick up patchouli in this fragrance at all. For me, this is like almost like a spicy vanilla, and I call it soapy. But listen, I'm not talking about bar soap. I'm talking about soap that has like a rich ambery honey in it. If you've had some of those high-end soaps at hotels that have that kind of a thing, they're vanilla, they're ambery, they're honey, they're almost creamy. It gives me that kind of a feeling. Beautiful vanilla fragrance, very deep, and it has a heaviness to it that translates well, as I mentioned, across the seasons. It doesn't preclude you from wearing it in warmer weather, just as long as you go a little bit light. There's even like a powdery aspect to this, very sort of light in the background. Frankincense, tonka bean, labdanum. It's hefty, but not overpowering. And it has a delicateness to it alongside of that heft. So it's an interesting dichotomy / juxtaposition of the light and the dark together in this fragrance. It plays well. I think that this has some feminine touches, but definitely plays unisex and can be worn by anyone. I'd love to see this, or smell this rather, on my husband if he would be willing to wear it. He doesn't love vanilla scents. I know, imagine in this world where vanilla has sort of taken over the internet in recent years. He's not crazy about vanilla fragrances. So anyway, spicy, incensey almost. It's frankincense, but it can translate in an incensey way. Resinous, kind of ambery vanilla with that like a goldenness to it. Opulence, beautiful. Let's move on. In the number 3 slot, and one of my very favorite white floral fragrances, a lot of people consider this to be a wedding scent. Very elegant. This is Honor. I have not tried the flanker. I think there's Honor 43, and I don't know what the differences are. I used to know. I have forgotten. This is a beautiful special occasion wedding fragrance, something like that. Mother of the bride, someone at a baby shower, the mother at a baby shower, whoever wanted to feel very highly feminine and just gorgeous. Classic white florals. It has the trifecta of gardenia and jasmine and tuberose. And I love that there's a carnation and lily of the valley to give it like this bright, uplifting nature. Carnation is a very pungent floral. And if you've smelled it, it's in Eternity from Calvin Klein. That same kind of carnation. Here it's toned down and it's bright and it's fresh, as is Lily of the Valley, that can lend a little bit of soapiness. Occasionally, Lily of the Valley can be a little bit metallic for me, but it comes across just very light and bright all together here as the crowning florals for this fragrance. And in the base, amber, I'm not even going to read you. It says opopanax, leather, and frankincense. That'll scare some people off. I don't think you need to be scared of this. I don't think any of those notes really sort of peek through. This is just a gorgeous, quintessential, very highly feminine, well-constructed white floral fragrance to like the highest degree. This is beautiful perfumery at its best. Honor. I forgot to mention that a long time ago, I tried Sunshine Woman. Oh my gosh, that's one of the most popular women's fragrances from the house. It didn't work well with me at that time. It's one I'd be interested in revisiting. There is a tobacco note in there that at the time I wasn't quite ready for, alongside some of the top notes of almond and Divana. The mixture of those just seemed a little bit I don't know, it just didn't quite work out for me. I wanted to love this, and I know a lot of people do. It is one I would like to try again. It's been probably 3 years or more since I tried that fragrance. And your taste change over time, your sense of smell changes over time. I want to revisit it, but it's not in this video, and it's not one I can, like, from the bottom of my heart recommend as something I love, but I know that a lot of other people do. So check that out if those sorts of notes sound interesting to you. Vanilla, jasmine, osmanthus, davana, tobacco, papyrus even. In my number 2 slot, I don't think that this is sold anymore. At least it's not on the AMOUAGE website, but you should still be able to get this on discount sites. And it is Beach Hut. Beach Hut. And this one does have the name on the side. So I think the older bottles have the name down the side. This is gorgeous. And when I first got it, I wasn't sure what I had gotten myself into. It was a little bit bizarre. And I thought, oof, maybe I shouldn't have blind bought this. But boy, did it grow on me to the point that it was in my masterpiece video that I filmed a few months ago. Very difficult fragrance to describe, very heavily woody. It is wood through and through. However, what I love about this, it reminds me of, and I love that the name evokes this for me, Beach Hut. Have you ever been to some of the more sort of abandoned or lesser traveled beaches that are not commercial in nature, where you have to park your car way back on the road and kind of make your way through a trail that maybe goes through some of the, grassy, marshy areas that are near ocean before you get to the ocean. And as you start to come up on the beachy part, there are a lot of palm trees that have dropped their leaves, that have dropped the bark off of the tree. You smell the wood heating up under the sun, and that's kind of wafting up into the air. There are mineral aspects in the air that are maybe coming off of the ocean, but don't smell like ocean air. Saltiness, something maybe even like cashmere in the background of this. It is really quite fascinating, mostly like mineral and woods, if I had to just narrow it down to 2 things that emerge here for me. I could look on Fragrantica and tell you what the other notes are, but right now, as I'm smelling it today, what's standing out to me. And I will say there's something so unusually and unpredictably elegant about this. Squarely unisex, maybe in masculine territory because of that heavy woodiness, but unpredictably beautiful, and it grows on you. Like, it's one of those sort of nostalgic smells that digs its way into your brain. You know how there are some songs that are like earworms where you can't stop thinking about them and kind of humming them? The smell of this fragrance sticks to the inner workings of your deepest memories about beachy environments. Does it smell like a beach? No, but it does give me that like dried wood. I think there's a driftwood note, as a matter of fact. Dried wood in the sun aspect with a deep minerality to it. Really unique, very interesting. I have nothing else in my collection that even remotely reminds me of this. And for similar reasons, undeniable in my number 1 slot is a fragrance that I hadn't even had on my radar. I am an affiliate with Twisted Lily, and they asked what I would be interested in trying. And I said, I think I would like to try Lineage from AMOUAGE. Let's just see what that's all about. Now, let me say quickly, it's coming on screen as a darker blue. In person, it's more of like a green tinge to it, like an aquamarine greenish tinge that it's just not picking up on camera like that. Oh my gosh, this fragrance blew me away in all the right ways. When I first sprayed it, I thought this is one of the most bizarre scents, kind of like guidance, like it just captures you off guard. And you're like, oh, who would make that into a fragrance? But give it a little second to dry down, give it several seconds. Heck, give it a few minutes and then come back and smell this and tell me if it isn't one of the most intriguing smells you've ever laid your nose on. I find this also to be so supremely refined and elegant once you give it a chance. It is beloved here in my house. I remember wearing this several times into my kitchen and my husband just going bananas and asking what I was wearing. He loves this on me. It smells really fantastic on him too. It's interesting looking at the note structure because it doesn't convey something about this fragrance that I pick up for me, which is something in the neighborhood of like an aquatic and mineral combination together. So it shares the mineral aspects of this, but maybe not the woodiness of this. And instead, this goes a little bit aquatic in interesting ways. In the top, there's pepper and ginger and saffron. So what does that amount to? Almost like this pungent, spicy smell right on the opening that's really sharp. But if you give it a chance to calm down, what starts to come through in the middle frankincense, and myrrh. It says fenugreek, and if you've smelled fenugreek, you'll know what I mean by this, that it has this sort of like, almost like anise and licorice-like smell to it. Okay, so if you think about those notes, leaning in a green, maybe vegetal direction, a little bit of that. But the frankincense and the myrrh are really nicely playing together, interwoven in here, and not quite heavy as they appear in maybe some of the other AMOUAGE lineup. There's a lightness of a lightness to them in this fragrance. And then as you get to the base, there are all these resins and patchouli and benzoin. And I can't even say I get all of that. It's just sort of resinous and maybe even slightly incensey and woody. So it's a really interesting fragrance, but I can't downplay that there's something uplifting, and it wafts through the air in this light and aquatic way for me, like this watery aquaticness to it, and these mineral aspects, almost like metals. Like when metals get hot, the smell that they give off. I know that sounds really bizarre. And I know you're thinking, gosh, with all of the beautiful AMOUAGE fragrances, Veronica, that is what's interesting to you. But it's one of those beguiling fragrances, like an enigma wrapped in a riddle, or a riddle wrapped in an enigma, that you just have to try on skin to understand how it plays and how it is so captivating for other people in your vicinity. Like this wafts and wafts with just a few sprays, and it's just so gorgeous and so unique and really beautiful for summer. There's even like this little slight hint of softening and sweetness that comes in as it begins to get deeper into the dry down for this. Gorgeous, gorgeous, alluring, unique, also masterpiece status. I can't compare this to anything else in my collection. The bottle is just gorgeous. Adore this. So I've got my eye on Love Delight as perhaps the next addition to the AMOUAGE collection here. And if it goes down in price, I may try Guidance, the new one, the flanker, Guidance 46, because that bottle is capturing me. So let me know what your favorite AMOUAGE fragrances are. Let me know what you think of this top 10 lineup here. And I appreciate you watching this video. As I mentioned before, this is second in a lineup of houses that I asked you all about if you wanted to hear house reviews. So the first one was Xerjoff, then we get to AMOUAGE, and the third is going to be Bond number 9. And I think I'll pause there and maybe do some other house reviews later into the summer. So please do leave your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for hanging out this long. Take care. See you in the next video, friends.